Okay, welcome everyone to the February seminar. We have Sofoklis Goulas today, who's going to talk about the value of remote work. Sofoklis, maybe sort of 45 to 50 minutes of talk, and then we can leave the last 10 minutes at least for any last minute questions. Sofoklis is happy to take any questions during as well. So please feel free to unmute your microphones and ask the question. And as usual, this is being recorded and will be available later this week or next week. Okay, over to you, Gulas.
Thank you, Matlub. Thank you all for being here today. This paper is about the value of remote work, and I'm presenting evidence from a correspondence experiment on tutors in Greece. I must say that I'm with the Brookings institution and DLO, of course. So the research question that this study focuses on is, do workers value remote work? And of course, we know a little bit about the amenity benefits of workers for remote work, but I'm presenting here evidence about additional benefits that workers derive from remote work. So what do we know so far? We know from surveys on workers that American workers value the option to work from home 2 or 3 days a week. And they are willing to sacrifice around 8% of pay. This is also consistent with a pre-pandemic experiment that also found that workers are willing to give up 8% of their wage for the option to work from home. And this, at the descriptive level, this 8% matches with what I see in my own data. Now, what this study does. So I start with the largest tutor board in Greece, and I scrape all the data on that board. So we're talking about the platform where tutors advertise their services. So there is no subscription required to access this platform. Families, clients can go in and see the profile of tutors. Tutors do not have to pay to post their advertisement on the platform. And the study conducts a correspondence experiment on that platform to elicit tutors' preference for remote versus in-person work. And I will talk shortly about why tutors. Now, about the contributions of this study, of course, this study contributes to the workers, to our understanding about the workers' preference for work flexibility. The thing is that most of the current literature hasn't done experiments after COVID, so we have some experimental evidence, but it's pre-COVID, and the situation after COVID is very different. And they looked at multiple definitions of work flexibility, while this study focuses narrowly on remote work. Now, I mentioned in the beginning that the literature identifies a remote work arrangement as an amenity that workers enjoy when the employer provides it. Now, in this study, I argue that remote work allows workers to expand their labor supply. So there are monetary benefits in remote work for this category of workers specifically because the tutors are not bound by contracts that require them to work only 40 hours per week. Of course, this study also contributes to our understanding about the price of remote work, how much of their wage workers are willing to give up for a remote work arrangement. Now, the correspondence experiment. So, thousands of randomly created messages were sent by email to tutors who were advertising their services on the largest tutor board, as I mentioned, in Greece. So the experiment took place last summer. And the messages were designed in such a way to plausibly represent typical parents. I used typical Greek names, for example, and I will talk about the messages shortly. And crucially, there were two treatment conditions. Half of the messages inquired about in-person lessons, and the rest inquired about online lessons. Everything else was identical. Just a preview of the results. We see a larger callback rate. So this is the key outcome variable, the callback rate, whether tutors replied to the email they received inquiring about in-person or online lessons. And we see that 10.7% of tutors who received an email inquiring about online lessons responded versus 7.3 of those who received an email inquiring about in-person lessons. So we see a stronger preference for online lessons. Now, the advantages of this design are several. First of all, we are able to remove biases that have to do with task and employment heterogeneity. Here we are very focused. We're talking about tutors. We're talking about online lessons. A key advantage of looking at tutors is, as I mentioned earlier, tutors are not bound by a contract. So this allows them to expand labor supply, to benefit from the time savings potentially that remote work arrangements allow for, and perhaps gain more money by expanding their labor supply. Another key advantage of tutors is that remote work for tutors has important policy implications. Because in the post-COVID era, we experienced, especially in the US, where I know more about, but in other places as well, we experienced learning losses. So understanding the scalability of online tutoring might allow us to design initiatives and interventions that connect students in remote areas with qualified teachers online. So there are deep implications in remote work for tutors beyond our understanding about the value of remote work. Um, Other advantages, of course, is that by focusing only on tutors, we don't have to worry about sorting into occupations that have varying degrees of access to remote work arrangements. I love this advantage. A key feature of this design is that I am able to account for, to a great extent, about the value add, because someone might say that workers might ask for less for remote work because they are less productive. So controlling, adjusting for the value add is crucial in such experiments, and I will explain how I do this.
Quick question. I mean, these
Yes.
people who are sending, these fictitious parents and the tutors who are advertising online, they're not based in the same city, right? I mean,
No.
yeah, so I was just wondering that, the response will be more from online anyway, just because they are more widespread. So,
Good point. I have included something in the design to account for this.
okay.
Specifically, I will answer this now. Um, the message that talks about in-person or online mentions the city, the town, the location, and it matches the location the tutor reports on their profile.
Okay.
So if you are in DuPont Circle in Washington, D.C., where I am right now, the mess and the tutor says my location is DuPont Circle, Washington, D.C., the message would say the same thing. I'm looking for a tutor in DuPont Circle, Washington, D.C. To exactly account for this, that if someone says I'm in Arlington, which is 40 minutes away, of course they would prefer to do this online.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Great. So let's move on. The experiment, as I mentioned, was run on this platform, thousands of tutors. The tutors post information about their credentials, experience, what they teach, location, and crucially, the ask rates. So we know how much money they ask for in-person and online lessons. And as I mentioned earlier, no registration or membership is required to access the platform, either as a tutor or a parent. Now, the design. Uh, I used help from a focus group to help me create messages that had appropriate language and names for the messages that were sent out. And it's also important to mention the timing of the experiment. This was done as soon as the school year had ended and not too not too deep into the summer for teachers to have filled out their student lists. So the tutors had still capacity. It was the end of the school year, so they had capacity to respond. So because if you message tutors, let's say in December, it is very likely they would have filled out their rosters already. Two typical Greek female names were featured in the messages. In every scenario, the child is female, and the messages match the tutor's specialty and location. And here are examples of the messages. So you can see, for example, the subject say lessons in person, English. Let's say lessons in person versus English lessons online. My name is blah blah. I found your contact information on blah blah platform. I am interested in private English, let's say, lessons at our home for my daughter. She has completed the first year of junior high school. She has reached approximately level B1. We would like her to take the exam for the B2 level diploma next year. So these are typical expectations from a tutor. And this is important because the messages, both types of messages, set the expected value add. I mentioned earlier on that it's important to make sure that we do not see preference for remote work because the worker is less productive when working remotely. And this is how I do this here. I set the expectation for the value add of the teacher. And of course, I mentioned the location to make sure that the tutor doesn't have a greater commute if they want to do an in-person lesson. A similar message for other types of subjects, if it is, for example, school subjects. Now, the experimental procedure, I mentioned is that this was conducted during the summer, randomly divided the population across these two conditions, and we recorded the responses of the tutors. And the key outcome is the callback rate. So we classify a response as a callback when the tutor requested to talk more, essentially. And cases where the tutor said, "Thank you for your message. I'm too busy right now. Let's talk about blah blah blah." those who declined to offer services immediately were not classified as callbacks. So here is an example of a callback. So you can see the reply. Good afternoon, my name is blah blah, and I'm an English teacher. You messaged me about lessons for your daughter. When would you like me to call you to speak on the phone? Thank you. So I classify this as a callback because it shows genuine interest to continue the conversation. Now, the empirical strategy. Given the random assignment of tutors to treatment conditions, I'm just comparing the callback rates between these two conditions to identify the preference for remote work. And my regression, which is a linear probability model, controls for tutor characteristics. As I mentioned earlier, the tutor characteristics, I will also show the descriptive statistics. So you can see the rich information that this data set has. Of course, we have the age, experience of the tutors, how many years, whether they are female, what type of subject they teach, their educational attainment. I want to focus on a couple of things. First of all, I want to focus on local competition. I construct a measure of local competition using the number of teachers who are teaching the same subject in the smallest block defined by the census, the Greek census, divided by the number of school-age children from the census. So tutors per kid essentially is my measure of competition. And this is important for me because the literature suggests a stronger preference for remote work in places where there is more competition in the local labor market. And I want to investigate this later on. The second thing I would like to highlight is the information on the hourly rates that the tutors ask. So you can see that on average, tutors ask for 12.9 euro for in-person versus 12.4 for online. For those who have both, I am able to see a difference of 1.1 euro. And I compare the characteristics between the tutors who were assigned in the in-person condition and those in the online condition. And I see balance in every tutor characteristic. And here you can see all the subjects that tutors were contacted about. You can see that we had around 4,000 messages sent out. You can also see the parent names, typical Greek names, both female to avoid any gender issues. Maria Georgiou, Anna Papageorgiou. And here you can see the callback rates, around 9% is the overall callback rate. And now we get to the important result, the estimated callback rate gap. And here you see that 7.3% of the tutors who received an email requesting in-person lesson gave a callback versus 10.7%. This is roughly 48%, so 3.4 percentage points, which reveals huge preference for remote work. And I do several heterogeneity analysis here. Females have a much stronger preference for remote work. We don't see the coefficient being statistically significant for male tutors. When we look at STEM versus non-STEM, we see stronger preference for remote work among tutors who teach STEM subjects. Potentially, this has to do with how savvy they are in technology. Now, in terms of population density, which the literature suggests that in places with higher density, there might be higher preference for remote work, I don't see huge variation there. I see a strong preference for remote work in both places above and below the median of the population density. Now, about local competition, I do see a stronger preference for remote work in places where there is above median competition in the local labor market, suggesting that when workers face a fiercer competition locally, they may turn to the online market. Now,
Excuse me,
the yes,
can I ask one question?
absolutely.
So you got a callback about less than 10% from a platform who the tutor advertising their tutoring service. I'm
Mhm.
quite curious about why this response rate are so low. And for example, you can consider how long the advertisement was posted and see whether those things are correlated with each other, right? But in general, I feel it's to me, it's a little bit surprised to have so low response. I just curious about why.
Yes, a number of reasons. First of all, I need to say that in other experiments in similar platforms, the callback rate is even lower. So this is not terribly low. In other places, experiments and platforms are low, and the reason is that in many cases, you don't have active users. So these people might have registered they might have created an account on the platform months ago. They may not actively monitor their emails, things like that.
Okay, so you are not call them according to a newly published advertisement for tutoring service. No.
No,
Okay, I see. Thank you.
the callbacks allowed us also to get some insights about the reasons why tutors might prefer to teach online versus in person. For example, some tutors said that they don't want to commute. Someone said they teach lessons only online because I'm very busy and do not want to waste time traveling between lessons. Someone said that it is very difficult to commute in Athens, so I work only online. Someone said I usually conduct lessons online, but if we live close and it is convenient, we can also do in-person lessons with your daughter. Someone said that they have other jobs. They said they live as a substitute teacher every year, so I cannot take on in-person lessons. Some tutors also argued in favor of the efficacy of online tutoring. So someone said there's no need to worry that the lesson cannot be conducted online. This was not a callback. This was someone who said, no, I cannot, but we can do online. Uh, they said I have my own material in Word and Excel formats with grammar and pronunciation rules, and there are also YouTube videos. Another one said I have been teaching online for many years with consistent success. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the tutors problem in terms of price setting, because this will help us understand the difference in the rates in in-person lessons and online. So we have a profit maximizing problem here where there is a capacity constraint. This is important. So I treat online lessons, remote work arrangements, essentially, as a way to relax the capacity constraint. So it's a cost function, essentially, that gets relaxed when people can teach online. And tutors are similar in this framework, but not identical, meaning that they face their own demand function. So they set a price, a wage, and as remote tutoring becomes available, each tutor's cost changes because of the capacity, so they can offer more hours. This is the key insight from this simple theoretical framework. At the same time, the tutor faces competition. So their own demand might become more elastic. This depends a lot on how differentiated they are, of course. And a key, of course, result here is that the ask rate for online lessons will be lower than the ask rate for in-person. And the tutor will be willing to conduct all online lessons if at the end of the day, the hours they are able to offer uh, uh, allow them to earn more money. This is the key insight here. So we would expect tutors to prefer to teach online if they are essentially making more money because they are expanding labor supply in a way that they teach more hours, and even at a lower rate, at the end they make more. And these are the implications of this simple theoretical framework, and I am able to investigate them
Can
in
I
this
ask you one
study.
thing?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
But knowing Athens, there must also be an uncertainty element. If you are doing on-site teaching, the time it takes to go from where you live to wherever. I mean, it's like a risky thing to, it can take 1 hour or 10 minutes, whatever. So it's not just, you don't know exactly how long it takes to commute, do you? Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
You're right. When you live in Athens and you work in Athens, there is this element. And in the initial stage of the design of the experiment, I considered specifying the times, saying I'm looking for a tutor who would teach evenings or weekends to get away from this issue of the risk. You're absolutely right. But there was feedback that this would be too many details for an initial
Right.
contact.
Yeah.
So this is a limitation. Yes, that in places like Athens, there is some uncertainty. So people in places like Athens are more likely potentially due to this to prefer to teach online. And this might be reflected to some extent in the heterogeneity analysis when I see, for example, higher preference for remote work among tutors in places with high competition, many tutors per student. This can uh, reflect exactly that.
But it would be interesting to repeat the study in a smaller city or where transport is more efficient and see if results would differ.
Yes, the data allow me to do this, even as it is. But the problem is that power.
Oh, right.
How much? Yes, because if you get a smaller city, how many tutors? How many? Yes,
Yeah.
it becomes a problem of power at the end. But over a longer period of time or in another country,
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
I think this has promise. Yes.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. So
Okay, I
I'm
have
plot.
another question.
Oh,
Can I? Yeah. since is there any evidence that the tutor will treat the parents or the tutees who can accept the online course and who cannot only accept the in-person course differently? For example, like I would think the people could accept online course are more advanced or more experienced, so that it's easier for me to teach. For example, is there any evidence can show?
About the cost that the tutors accept?
No,
Can you elaborate a
the tutor.
little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, as a tutor, for example, I could treat the people, the students who can accept online course uh, versus students can only accept the in-person course differently.
I see, I see. I
Uh,
don't expect the tutors to treat them differently, because first of all, the difference in the price is small. It's around 8%. This means that it's not that the tutors attract different kind of students in their online lessons versus their in-person lessons. I think the tutors, the ask rate of the tutors reflects more their own preference and their own calculus rather than a way to sort students. I do not have formal evidence on this. Whether they would, in this particular experiment, luckily, I'm controlling the demand side, right? So, and the messages are plain enough to not signal any different level of social or economic status to say, okay, this is the kind of, for the tutors to say, this is the kind of student I would want to teach in person versus, oh, this is someone I would, no, let them do online. I don't think that the messages allow the parent to, excuse me, allow the tutors to do this kind of thinking. But the messages do communicate that there is a parent who cares. So in comparison to the overall population, yes, I suppose that the tutors can see that this student is has parents who care and who care about getting a tutor to help them with school subjects or with foreign languages, and they have expectations because the message specifies that we want the student to get from B1 to B2. So the parent, to the eyes of the tutor, has some expectations. So I do think that there may be some differences in the way the tutors perceive these people versus the general population, but not between the two conditions.
Okay, thank you. By the way, why you only restrict the tutees are female? And
Ah,
another question, do you find gender difference for female tutor and male tutors have different preference across the online and in-person courses?
yes. I did female for two reasons. First of all, a slightly higher percentage of students are at least in secondary school, 50 in high school is 57% are female. And the other reason is that I didn't want high variation because I didn't know ex ante whether the gender would introduce additional variation, limiting my power would require for me to have more power to get to where I need for the overall result. So I was trying to keep it simple. because I didn't know what would be the callback rate in the beginning. In another iteration of this experiment, of course, I would love to vary the gender of the parent and the gender of the student and see whether this matters for tutors. Yes, that's a very straightforward extension from here. And I do see female tutors have a stronger preference for remote work. The difference between males and females is not statistically significant, but this might reflect that I need more power to get to some stars here. In terms of magnitude, I do see difference.
Okay.
Also,
Can you repeat what's the
yes,
difference you can see in magnitude between the genders? Yeah, there.
yes.
So the females, they have a high coefficient. That means, sorry, I'm late.
Yeah, please.
So the gender difference there means what?
The difference here.
Yeah.
Excuse me, this is between males and excuse me, this is between in-person and online.
Yeah.
So this compares the callback rate between female tutors in the online condition, in the online condition versus female tutors in the in-person condition. So 4.2 percentage points in the callback rate. So this means that female tutors have a stronger preference for remote work.
I see. Now, the female tutors may also have, a preference for working at home because they do a disproportionate share of homework.
Excellent
Maybe
point.
kids at
Yes,
home.
excellent point. And I conduct a survey after the experiment to study exactly the reasons, and I have insights to share.
Uh-huh.
So let me move ahead. Let me see the time. Okay. And I was here at the ask rates. We do see the online ask rates being a little lower. You can see here where I plot online the ask rates versus in-person ask rates that a lot of the tutors ask the same rate, potentially meaning that they are differentiated enough to not feel that they have to lower their rate when they face online competition versus the local labor market competition. But for the most part, tutors, for those who do not charge the same rate, most of them charge lower rate for online. And I use the ratio, the rate, the percentage change between the two to define the wage differential. And I use this in my subsequent analysis. You can see the distribution here. You can see that roughly 60% charge the same rate. And here you can see the difference in the callback rate gap for those who have practically zero, and those who have positive rate differential. So let's get over here, for example. We can see that the callback rate gap between online and in person is higher for those with a positive wage rate differential. This means that those who prefer to teach online are also sacrificing more of their in-person income to do so. So this means that the wage gap, that the ask rate gaps we observe reflect some valuation of remote work. And we see that it increases. So as we move, so this is the estimated callback rate difference. And we see that as we get to a higher rate of sacrifice, essentially, we see a stronger preference for remote work.
Yeah.
Now, I want to question. Are good? I want to talk a little bit about the survey I did because it offers some interesting insights. So after the experiment, I was able to conduct a brief survey. Few people, 86 observations, not a ton. But what I did is I asked the tutors to rate the degree of their agreement with some statements. And the statement said, for example, that online lessons allow me to teach more hours, or in-person lessons allow me to teach more hours, or I have the technological tools to conduct lessons online, things like that. So this rate of agreement, which was on a scale from -5 to +5, allows me to see what reasons are important. So very descriptively, I get the average score and I rank the reasons. So people who you can see here that they say that they have the technological tools and skills to teach online. They teach more hours. Online lessons allow them to teach more hours. And at the end of these statements, I asked them, do you prefer to teach online or in person? Why did I do that? Because I wanted to compare the scores for those who agree, who prefer to teach online and those who prefer to teach in person. Because I thought if they give me the same score, then this reason cannot be the reason for their preference. But if they score differently on a particular item, this must be, let's say, a mediator of their preference for remote work. So, and here I present the results of this investigation. So I take the list of reasons, all the statements, and you can find details in the paper, and I compare the scores for those who said they prefer to teach in person and those who said they prefer to teach online. And I took the difference between the two. And we can see that those who prefer to teach online, they give a higher score to the statement that has to do with job satisfaction, then that online lesson can be more effective, additional employment and teaching more hours. So this is important, these two things, additional employment and teach more hours. I take these as aligning with the predictions of the theoretical model that said that tutors might prefer online lessons also because they might expand their labor supply. Of course, other reasons emerge as well. A mediator, if I may use this term, for preference for in-person work seems to be that online lessons may require more student cooperation. So some tutors might say, okay, online tutoring is good, but not for everybody. So online in-person lesson might, in in-person lessons, it might be easier to get the student to cooperate. Now, because of the interesting difference between male and female tutors, I did this investigation by gender to see what was going on and which mediators emerged as important for each gender. So we can see, for example, that job satisfaction is important for both. But look at recognition and respect. So the statement said something like teaching online allows me to get more recognition and respect. Men agreed more with this statement. we don't see strong agreement for women who prefer to teach online in this aspect, in this region, in this mediator. On the other side, teaching more hours. I care a lot about this mediator. And females who prefer to teach online showed a stronger agreement with this mediator. So it is women who expand their labor supply. So it could be that they may spend less time commuting, even though when I ask about commuting expenses, they didn't pick up an important difference here. Someone might ask, why are you not asking about commuting time? I'm not asking about commuting time because I am asking all other uses of time. I am asking, for instance, more time for loved ones and personal interests. So this doesn't seem to be a key mediator for preference for remote work among females or among males.
But it
Now,
might,
just to, yes.
sorry, so it might be not necessarily that people are, like in terms of more time with loved ones, but just the districtility of spending long hours
Right.
in the long hour in the tube, train or tube or whatever.
Right. This utility. You're right. I call it stress in this context. And I call it also diseases. Yes, exposure to diseases, stress, job satisfaction. Job satisfaction could also pick up the reverse of this. So they feel more satisfied potentially because they do not get this utility that you mentioned. Just to conclude, to make sure I'm on time, we find here stronger preference for remote work, meaning that the tutors who were contacted with messages inquiring about online lessons gave a higher callback rate versus tutors who were contacted via email inquiring about in-person lessons. Another key insight here is that the greater the valuation of remote work arrangements as proxied by the rate differential is positively associated with preference for remote work. So this is where the valuation aspect comes in. And even at the descriptive level, I mentioned early on that 1.1 is the euro is the difference between in-person and online. And if you look at this at the ratio level, is around 8%, which matches what we see in the literature. There are some implications of this. Of course, workers are willing to pay for remote work arrangements. This is a key implication of this result, since they are willing to sacrifice some portion of their ask rate. But since we see continually this increase in preference as the differential increases, it means that the reported wage differential might not fully reflect the reservation wage. There might have a higher valuation of remote work than what the posted differential implies. A third implication, and this is very policy relevant, I mentioned it in the beginning. Since tutors are willing to teach online, and we have contexts in which we are missing the human capital for teachers. It could be, this study could mean that there is room to scale online tutoring in places where it is hard to get good teachers or not enough teachers. So this speaks to the scalability of this intervention, and there are places in the US where they are doing online tutoring. And I will stop here.
Great. Thank you very much, Sofoklis. Very interesting presentation. Unfortunately, I have to go now because I have teaching to do at 2 o'clock. So I will leave
It's
the
not
rest
online.
of it. I leave the rest of it in the capable hands of Klaus. Klaus, thanks for covering, and see you all next month. Bye.
Thank you, Matlub.
Thank you very much, Matlub. But we are still online
Yeah.
here for
Yeah.
the next minutes. Thanks, Matlub. Well, one issue. What do the teachers know really about those students they have to teach? Is it's just a blank? I mean, and what do they expect as such? Younger people or older people? These are small kids or older people? Maybe you have explained it better and I didn't listen to it.
Yes, so the kid is in middle school.
Okay.
So he's in middle school. I think I think grade 7, if I'm not mistaken. This is important because yes, you don't want the kids to be too young. But I didn't want, because of course, how can you be asking for online lessons for a 4-year-old, let's say?
Exactly.
And I didn't want the kid in the scenario to be too old because I wanted to have many tutors being able to teach that level. So it was a balancing act. Yes, I don't want it to be very young, but I want a ton of people to be able to teach 7th grade material.
Okay, but at least the range of students is clear. It's well defined.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, other questions at the moment? Elena, perhaps? You have to unmute. Yes.
I have a question because even if 10% is fine, maybe I was thinking for the response rate of these teachers, I was thinking if by any chance you want to go back to them, maybe one thing now you know the average wage, instead of having the parent asking how much do you charge, because maybe the teacher has already the rate on their website. So maybe this question,
They
how
do.
much do you charge, reveal that they're going to waste time with these parents because maybe the parents want to negotiate the price. So instead, you could have a parent that wants to pay a little more to be sure that they have a reply. So to say, I'm really in a hurry to find someone for my kid. So you could have something that points them that you really want an urgent answer. And you could say, I would be happy to pay €1 more.
Yes,
You
excellent
are
idea.
available.
Yes.
And maybe you would get more replies. But then I don't know whether this will confound the things, because now you will have people that maybe will reply more because you offer them already a price to pay them just a little bit more. Or present
Yes, but this is a very interesting thought. Yes. First of all, I need to say that it was important to ask in the message about the rate to make sure that what I get from the website is correct.
Yes.
And I have a figure on the paper that compares the two to make sure that the figures are right, the rates are right. But this is an interesting experiment to see whether, because this would also get a little bit more at evaluation, because I can modify the rate. So to some, I can say €1 more, I can say €2 more, and see the differences. Yes. The power also comes to mind.
Yeah. And then you can also see if they accept to come in person now that you pay them more. You're not asking how much you charge, but you're gonna propose. So there's just an idea for
Yes.
I don't know how long does it take to rerun the whole thing.
It takes a couple of months, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, but now I also have a better understanding of the power I'm facing. So
Yeah.
I might have room to design a study that has good chances at estimating the effect.
Yeah, but the study is super interesting. I very much enjoyed this idea.
Thank you.
we don't have yet this type of experimental methods in the area of work from home. So we need a lot from these things. Well done. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Further questions? Remarks? Well, if this is not the case, we have to thank Sofoklis very much for a very exciting session and interesting
Thank you.
we got, and looking forward to see the paper, perhaps as a GLO discussion paper at some time, and later on published in a good journal. Okay.
Thank you so much. Have a good day, guys.
Thank you very much. I stop recording.